On what should have been an ordinary flight, tragedy struck Azerbaijan Airlines Flight 8243, plunging it into a disaster that shocked the world. A deadly misstep in a high-stakes air defense system turned a routine journey into an international incident. Stay with us as we uncover how a catastrophic accident unfolded and the ripple effects it has caused on a global scale. The flight's fateful journey. It was December 25, 2024, when Azerbaijan Airlines Flight 8243, an Embraer 190AR, departed from Baku, Azerbaijan, bound for Grozny, Russia. On board were 62 passengers and 5 crew members, embarking on what was expected to be an uneventful flight. As the aircraft neared Grozny, adverse weather conditions loomed ahead. Pilots prepared for the usual challenges of a winter landing, but they were unaware of the chaos brewing in the skies near their destination. Russian air defenses in the region had been activated to repel a reported Ukrainian drone attack, a development that would soon intertwine tragically with the plane's path. The moment disaster struck. As Flight 8243 entered Grozny's airspace, everything seemed routine at first. The pilots, both seasoned with thousands of flight hours between them, were focused on their descent amid deteriorating weather conditions. However, passengers soon reported hearing a loud bang, followed by the aircraft jolting violently. Overhead luggage compartments burst open, scattering belongings throughout the cabin. Unbeknownst to those on board, the plane had been struck by a Russian surface-to-air missile. The missile, fired from a Pantsir S-1 air defense system, had locked onto the plane, mistaking it for a potential threat amidst the reported Ukrainian drone activity in the area. The explosion tore through the fuselage, damaging critical systems, including navigation and communication. Smoke began to fill parts of the cabin, and oxygen masks deployed as passengers screamed in panic. The pilots, struggling with rapidly failing instruments, declared an emergency using what remained of their communication systems. They attempted to divert to Aktau International Airport in Kazakhstan, the nearest viable landing site. Meanwhile, flight attendants worked valiantly to calm passengers and assist those who had been injured in the chaos. The entire ordeal was a testament to the fragility of life in the face of unforeseen disaster. A civilian flight caught in the crossfire of military operations. As the damaged aircraft approached Aktau, it became increasingly clear that a safe landing was unlikely. The engines, battered by the impact of the missile strike, were failing to maintain consistent power. Despite the pilots' desperate efforts to keep the plane steady, the aircraft came down short of the runway. The impact was catastrophic. The fuselage broke into multiple pieces upon hitting the ground, with debris scattering across a wide area. Flames engulfed sections of the wreckage as emergency crews rushed to the scene. Survivors described the moments before the crash as surreal, with some praying and others bracing for the inevitable. Of the 67 people on board, 38 tragically lost their lives on impact or succumbed to their injuries shortly after. The remaining 29 survivors were pulled from the wreckage, many of them suffering from severe burns, broken bones, and other traumatic injuries. Rescuers worked tirelessly, often using their bare hands, to free those trapped beneath twisted metal and shattered seats. The crash site was soon cordoned off, and investigators began the grim task of piecing together what had happened. Local hospitals were overwhelmed as they treated survivors and received the bodies of those who had perished. The haunting cries of grieving families filled the air as the full scope of the tragedy became evident, uncovering the truth. As investigators combed through the wreckage, the grim reality of the situation began to unfold. Fragments of the missile were found embedded in the fuselage, confirming initial suspicions. The Pantsir S-1 air defense system had been activated following reports of a Ukrainian drone attack near Grozny. In the chaos of the moment, operators had mistakenly targeted the civilian aircraft. The Pantsir S-1 is known for its precision in defending against aerial threats, but human error, compounded by the fog of war, had turned the sophisticated system into a tragic liability. Poor visibility due to adverse weather conditions, and a high volume of activity in the airspace had overwhelmed the system's operators, leading to the fatal miscalculation. The investigation also highlighted a series of procedural failures. Airspace over Grozny had not been closed despite the heightened military activity in the region, a decision that aviation experts later criticized as negligent. Questions arose about whether better coordination between military and civilian authorities could have prevented the disaster. As the investigation continued, governments and aviation experts debated the broader implications of the incident. How could such an advanced defense system fail so catastrophically? And more importantly, what measures could be put in place to ensure this would never happen again? These questions loomed large as the world grappled with the preventable tragedy. The tragedy immediately sparked international outrage. Azerbaijan's President Ilham Aliyev condemned Russia, accusing it of attempting to cover up the incident. He demanded an apology, punishment for those responsible, and compensation for the victims' families. Russia, led by President Vladimir Putin, expressed condolences but stopped short of accepting full responsibility. Putin described the event as a tragic accident, which only fueled tensions between the two nations. The incident also drew global attention to the risks associated with active conflict zones and the fragility of air safety in regions prone to geopolitical turmoil. The human toll and unanswered questions. For the families of the victims, the crash left a void that no apology or compensation could fill. Survivors recounted harrowing tales of survival, from bracing for impact to pulling others out of the wreckage. Meanwhile, experts and investigators continued to piece together what exactly went wrong. Could the missile strike have been prevented? Were the air defense operators properly trained to handle such scenarios? These questions remain unanswered as the world awaits a full report on the incident. The downing of Flight 8243 stands as a grim reminder of the unintended consequences of war and human error. It's a story of loss, survival, and the precarious intersection of civilian life with military operations. If you found this story eye-opening, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the events that shape our world. What are your thoughts on the tragedy of Flight 8243? Share your perspective in the comments below.